How to paint fabric using oil paints. First thing I'm going to do is put some fabric up, grab a canvas, and then put my paints out. I've got my two blues, the mixture there, some white, and of course my reds. Then I mix them together and I have my dark purple and my light purple. First thing I'm going to do is use some mineral spirits, and I'm basically going to just put in a light wash. And the reason I put in a light wash is because all the colors on top of it are going to be more harmonious instead of stagnant and not blending together. I turned it upside down so that my heavier wash was down at the bottom for the shadows and so forth. And this is just super light. And I'm going to go in on wet, and very lightly I'm just using my darkest purple, and I'm kind of outlining the form of my fabric, and I'm taking my time, really looking back and forth. And one thing you might want to mention is I probably could have worked on the actual color of my purple a little bit more to match that if I was concerned, but I'm not that super concerned about the accuracy since this is just a demo. Now, once I have the dark lines put in, and once again, this is all still fairly wet because I'm already working wet on wet, and I'm just putting in the outlines. Taking my time, readjusting, looking back and forth, reloading the brush, keeping it thin. I'm not using any white right now. It kind of creates more of that transparency that's going through. Now, I'm about ready for the next step. And the next step is I'm going to add in the super darks. So I'm going to go in no white whatsoever, just the pure dark. And I'm going in where those shadows are. So I'm constantly going back and forth, looking at my still life, my fabric, and then going back and putting in where the darks are. You don't want to make the hang so super, super dark, and you don't want to have a super strong outline. You just want to have it kind of settled in a little bit, and it's still fairly diluted with the mineral spirits. That dilution is going to keep it, because now what I'm doing is I'm coming back with my lights. Okay, so my medium, which you saw on my palette, was kind of like the dark color mixed with mostly white, and I'm just kind of putting in the medium areas. And then I'm going to go in there and I'm going to put in the whites, and I'm just blocking it in. I'm kind of like throwing up the paint onto the canvas and just making it thick. And once again, I'm working the just straightforward darks lights. And a lot of people have a hard time seeing this. And I kind of think of it as you're exaggerating what the lights and the darks are going to be. So as an artist, you are training your eyes to translate to your hands and kind of exaggerate that illusion, because that's what you're doing. You're creating a 2D illusion of a 3D object. So you kind of have to add that into it. And the more you do it, the more you can see those extreme lights and those extreme darks. I am now taking a very soft, dry brush, and I'm going to gently blend those strong, thicker colors together very softly. I'm making sure that my brush is kind of just blending it, very simple. It's kind of like when you're using charcoal and you want to achieve a very subtle value shift. You take your finger and you pull the heavy charcoal out, and it just magically creates those 10 different value scales. Well, that's what we're doing here. You're going to be pulling out the dark and pushing in with the white. And don't forget to keep that soft blending brush dry and not too much paint on it. So I have my napkin, and I don't know if you can see it, but I'm going to occasionally, I dry my brush, especially if I'm going to go into the lighter area of the fabric and pull that into the dark. Now also notice my direction of my brush. I'm not always just going up and down. I am right now, I'm working on the dark area, but see how I'm pulling it sideways, horizontal to the fabric? You want to keep that horizontal going as well as the vertical. You want the direction of your paint, your stroke to matter, and that's adding in that texture of the thread and so forth. So don't always just go one direction down. It has a tendency to limit your technique and really keeping it looking smooth. So, in essence, you just want to continue to keep this technique going back and forth. You have your darks, you have your lights, and then you have the very soft brush that's dry, and you just kind of mix them back and forth. You're going to marry them and you're going to kind of gradiate where you think it's going to blend, and be careful that you don't have too much of one color on your soft bristles as you're blending it in. So you just kind of take your time, go with it, add more as you need to, and don't forget to go horizontal with your brush stroke, not just straight down. Now, just as a reminder, when you're working on still lifes, you always want to be concerned with your perspective and your drafting skills of the objects and the backgrounds. That's what's going to make it more believable. You also want to think about, has your value been used to model forms and backgrounds appropriate? Meaning, do you have 10 different values? Are they in the right spots? Do they correlate to where the light source is? You also want to think about how your brushstroke direction is being used to find the planes and the changes in the models of the forms. Your brushstroke is just as important as the color. You want to make sure that it is like modeling the image, that illusion that you're creating. Also, has color been used to model forms and backgrounds? Here we're just using the one color. I am going to throw in a background. And as you know, I typically say you should paint your backgrounds first so that anything in the foreground will be overlapping in any impurities and your background's not laying on top of your foreground material. But for this purpose, I really wanted to dive in to show you how to paint the fabric. Therefore, I painted the fabric first. Now, you can see me here. I'm just taking my time, doing the subtle blends back and forth, but working fairly quickly so the paint doesn't fall out. Also, with still lifes, you want to be concerned with the lost and found edges that are present in your design. It wants to flow and have a gestalt feeling across your canvas so that it's engaging. Where does it stop? Where does it pick up? Now, this is just a fabric, so it's not showing too much. And then, of course, you always want to think about your formal choices of lighting direction, value key, colors, level of viewpoint, the scale, the composition, how the edge treatments convey the narrative of the work. It's not a bold one outline where the line is. You kind of have to think, okay, well, this actually, the line is the lightest, this line is dark. It's not a cartoon. You're looking at rendering it more realistic. And that takes some time and patience and just working back and forth until you can get the subtlety to work for you. So take your time, go slow, practice it. That's how we learn. Let's review the steps. Step 1, you're going to put a light wash over all of the canvas. Step 2, you're going to use your darkest color and using mineral spirits kind of outline the figure or the shape that you're working with. And step 3, you're going to go in, put in the darkest darks, then you're going to put in the lightest lights, and you're going to put in your medium. Step 4, you're going to use a dry, soft brush and go in and blend them together using horizontal brush strokes and strokes that match the flow of the fabric. I like to think that I'm sculpting it, and if I was sculpting it, my brush stroke would go in the same shape as the fabric. So the fabric is kind of like a wave, it's rolling up and down. So my brushstroke needs to roll, with that fabric of the wave, trying to keep that parallel line to the edge of the fabric. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to throw in the background here, and I'm kind of using the yellow ochre along with some white. And notice that it's going over that purple underwash, and it's making it sit down so that it's not stark and sticking out, and it makes the painting more harmonious to have that underpainting underneath it. And that's the beauties of oil, is that you can get those layers and those translucents and those blends. So I hope this helps. A quick demo on how to paint fabric.